The exotic mystery of Japan has enthralled Europeans for centuries. Even today, many people across the world continue to find inspiration beneath the rising sun. Old and new worlds coexist in Japanese culture in wonderful ways. Join our journey to discover Japan. In a small rural station in southwest England, trains come and go as someone sits watching, scribbling in a notebook. It looks like he could be train spotting, but he seems too lost in his thoughts.
Train station, the heat of the platform in my blood.
He's written a haiku, a traditional Japanese short poem formed of 3 concise lines. Train station, the heat of the platform in my blood.
It's a very hot summer's day. So again, there's the literal meaning of the heat of the platform in my blood. I can feel the heat rising off the platform and heating my body up and my blood.
Allan Summers, at 59 years of age, is one of a few professional haiku poets in Britain. He is leaving his hometown of Bradford-on-Avon and travelling to London. He stops in on his favourite bookshop.
I'm really pleased. There's a really good selection of haiku books.
Allan was first struck by Japan's haiku masters like Matsuo Basho, famous for his travelogue poetry. Basho lived in the 17th century. He refined the form now known as haiku. It was a Basho poem that changed Allan's life.
It just hit me like being caught in a lightning storm. I just knew this was it, and that really was where I was going to go with poetry. It was writing haiku in English. Oh yes.
Allan first came across the poem in English.
Summer grass, all that remains of warriors' dreams. It seems simple at first, and it's nice and brief, and you have one setup that summer grass is, and then suddenly we're talking about something else. We're talking about the death of soldiers and their hopes and fears as they entered battle.
This is Basho's poem written in Japanese. It has 3 short lines and sounds like this. Natsu guso ya, tsuwamono domo ga, yume no ato. Phonetically, in Latin script it looks like this. Haiku has 2 fundamental rules. The lines have 5, then 7, then 5 syllables. Most English haiku are not in the 5-7-5 syllable format. The second rule is there needs to be a seasonal reference. In this case, it's summer grass. English haiku don't always follow traditional Japanese rules, but Allan thinks they must keep one key aspect.
It's almost like a poem of 2 parts. There's one image and then another image which may or may not seem related. Often haiku work better when they clash against each other. They don't almost make logical sense being in the same space.
Allan was an amateur poet when he found haiku at age 36. In more than 20 years, hundreds of his haiku have been published in books and journals. Allan searches for his first ever haiku.
That I can't put my hands on it. Okay, so if I got it right now. 1,000 myriad birds write a song on wire.
From the start, Allan followed the seasonal reference rule. Here, 1,000 myriad birds suggests spring.
I was aware of the seasonal words and quite interested in them. I must admit with that first poem, I was more attracted to the word as it appeared and sounded.
In his early works, Allan always included a seasonal word. Here, the symbol of winter is the fox. In this one, the robin refers to spring. Yet over time, Allan's attitude began to change.
Because I'm a Westerner and I live in the 20th century, I wanted over time to move away from trying to be a poet of the era of Basho.
The seasonal element started to feel restrictive. Then Allan discovered one of Japan's top modern poets.
This is one of the major living Japanese haiku poets, Tota Kaneko.
Born in 1919, Tota Kaneko is still writing haiku today. He's famous for breaking tradition to create gendai, or modern style.
Air raid, the single, well-sharpened pencil. When I realised, and this is from a master poet of haiku, that I didn't have to put season words in every single haiku.
Tota's work is also not limited to the natural world. He covers everyday topics and themes of war and human weakness.
It gave me permission to start writing what I felt were really serious haiku about what happens in my life.
Allan could now write poems on any subject. He uses his visits to London to reflect on modern life. Allan observes the things around him and captures the feelings that come up.
What I'm trying to do today is absorb what a city is and capture that in a haiku. It's only when you really stop, things happen. Otherwise, if you're just walking, you're missing half the things. You're missing half the magic. I've managed to note down a few aspects of city life, and one of the most obvious and the ones we deliberately overlook is our rubbish, our trash. And I passed by quite a large recycling area on a side street, and what caught my notice was there was a child's jigsaw. It was literally spilling out, and I was thinking, oh, this represents the growing up of a child, and now this jigsaw piece is discarded. So this is one of several versions I've been going through the last hour or so. The different years of a child's jigsaw pieces round recycling bins.
Allan met his wife Karen in a poetry group nearly 20 years ago. She's also a practicing poet. They often share and discuss their work.
I love Allan's work. Well, most of it. I will soon say if I don't like a poem that he's written. We're quite tough on each other's writing. But I think he has a real sensitivity for using the English language in a kind of lateral way. Like he puts together really interesting images and really sensitively produced images that sometimes I just read what he's written, or else he'll read something out to me and I'm like, wow. You know, he's kind of delivered again. It sort of never fails to amaze me how he can just come up with these things that just make your spine tingle. Some examples.
Allan teaches haiku poetry professionally, including online coaching. Today, Allan has a student from America.
What's your first poem?
Lazy days, floating through the fog of our breakup.
Is that fictional or factual?
It's factual, unfortunately.
Writing and exchanging haiku creates a community. Allan has formed bonds with people around the world.
Thanks for being on the course. I'm sure that haiku helped with things in my life, challenges with family, jobs, personal relationships, and I'm sure it helped consistently bring me out of my myself, because I'm naturally a very shy person. So I think, yes, haiku has helped me with confidence in life, not just in poetry.
Allan and Karen have organised a special walk today called a ginkgo.
Walks are very traditional in Japan for different reasons.
Ginkgo has been part of the tradition for hundreds of years. People travel in groups, composing and sharing their poems. 5 people are joining Allan's ginkgo today. They pick their way along a picturesque waterway. For some of the group, it's their first experience of haiku.
We just capture what's there. We're just taking things from real life, and yeah, big picture's great, and we need a contrast, something very small, which might be overlooked, either because it's small or the fact we see it every day.
So there's this piece of bindweed crawling up a reed here. So I was looking at that and just looking at the pattern of it, really, and the zigzag as it goes up to the top. But then I was thinking, so what happens when it actually gets to the top? Does it stop? Does it fall off?
We've got one half of the haiku about the bindweed, and I quite like what you said, what happens afterwards. So you've got the abstract and the concrete.
Yeah.
So that's great.
Each member has their own interests. Different things catch their eye.
I'm just making a note of this plant. I think it may be Angelica, but there's lots of these plants which are very similar, so it's hard to tell, but I'm just making a note of it.
At the end of the walk, they gather to read their pieces. Allan gives them feedback.
Bindweed twisting around the reeds, zigzag up reed leaf like a snake. I don't suppose you'll like that bit. What happens when it reaches the top?
Okay, what happens when it reaches the top? Great phrase. Yeah, with haiku, I mean, sometimes it seems boring to a poet, but I just like the plain language of the bindweed. Just, yeah, it's literal, truthful, accurate.
Yeah.
Angelica or dropwort. Meadows.
That I like. Is that the name of it, Angelica?
Well, there's 2 things. Angelica, they can be a little bit similar, and there's Angelica, from which you get seeds, and you can get the stem for Angelica, or dropwort, which is deadly, really deadly. And they're not dissimilar. Well, that's the point. It's quite hard to tell sometimes at some stages.
So what we can do is Angelica or dropwort, don't need a question mark, because you don't need it. It is what it is. That can be one line, and then you think of a phrase, and what you could do is, instead of just saying, I don't know which one it is, because you've already said that.
And it's got added resonance because one of those things is poisonous, one of those things is very clearly the wrong choice, isn't it?
So that relates to our larger life.
Yeah. At first I was quite confused about haiku and what it was, but as Allan gave more examples of what it was and what it wasn't, both in abstract and concrete terms, it became clearer.
The strength of how he led us today was by not enforcing ideas on us, by leaving us quite free. He gave us some instructions, but then he let us be ourselves.
The successful day encourages Allan in his path.
It's the people, that's the future, and the more and more people that get in touch with it, they don't have to be poets. It brings much more. I mean, obviously it's nice that it's a nod to the Japanese culture. It's an amazing form of poetry, especially as it's so brief. But it's connecting people, and sometimes in society we're not allowed to be connected to each other.
A moment on the bridge provides Allan a chance to reflect on haiku's role in his life.
Haiku can often be metaphorical, so what I've done is I've also alluded to Basho, because Basho made many allusions to other writers. He's famous for a work of art with haiku called The Narrow Roads to the Deep North. The narrow roads in parallel universes, a butterfly sneezes.